Good morning. It's Sunday, March 7th, and this is the Georgia Gang. I'm Russ Spencer in for Lori Geary. Georgia is several steps closer to new election laws. Are they about protecting the vote or suppressing it? Georgia now ranks last in the country in distributing vaccines. We'll talk about why and how to change that. And is the pandemic behind the spike in crime in Atlanta and across the country? The FBI director has some thoughts. Kathy, Janelle, Theron, and Phil are joining us from their homes. The debate begins right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Well, March 4th came and went, and Joe Biden is still the president. Another QAnon conspiracy theory bites the dust. But the disinformation, the lie about the election being stolen, is still being spread and still influencing legislation here in Georgia and across the country.
Do you miss me yet? Do you miss me yet?
Former President Trump told an adoring crowd at CPAC in Orlando last weekend what he has claimed dozens of times in recent months, that he won the November election. The man he chose to run the FBI, Christopher Wray, testified on Capitol Hill this week that they have found no evidence of widespread election fraud, much less anything that would have tipped the election. But despite that assurance and recounts and dozens of court judgments nationwide, Georgia is one of 43 states across the country where Republicans are pushing 253 election reform proposals.
House Bill 531 is designed to begin to bring back the confidence of our voters back into our election system.
The Democrats insist most of the blame for any loss in confidence in the system belongs to the former president's falsehoods about a rigged election.
Republicans in the Georgia General Assembly are trying to change the rules of the election here in Georgia. Rules that you wrote because you were handed defeat in November the 3rd and again on January the 5th. And you know your only chance at winning future elections is to prevent eligible Georgians from casting their ballots and having their voices heard.
All right, let's bring in the gang. I watched this program last Sunday morning, and you had an excellent discussion about this topic, but a lot happened this week, and crossover day is tomorrow when a bill has to pass in at least one chamber to survive during this legislative session. The election reform measures in question would mean fewer ballot drop boxes, an end to no excuse absentee voting, more ID for absentee voting, and fewer chances to vote early on the weekend. So, Janelle, let's begin with you. What's your take on where things stand here, and what do you think about the House vote in Washington to try to create some national voting standards?
You know, I think that we are continuing to have to justify common sense, and common sense says that if we saw an increase in absentee ballot voting, if we saw that there were some irregularities that took place, then we should fix it. And that is exactly what Republicans are doing. I think Democrats want to continue to spew this narrative that we are somehow just, sore losers and don't see a way into and see this as an option to win again. I mean, we're going to win simply because Joe Biden can't keep a promise. So we're not worried about that. But at the end of the day, this is about election integrity. And when it comes to the H.R. 1, anyone who supports a bill that says that you can vote on same day or do same day registration, any person that supports a bill that allows people to eliminate cleaning up voter files are people who have clearly made election integrity at the bottom of the list. It's no longer a priority. Right. And how do you expect people to vote and feel comfortable voting when the process is so tainted? And at the end of the day, I think, we can look at what happened with the Fulton County Board of Election. They're fighting to just maintain their bipartisan decision to get rid of the director. I know that they are filling that space, but that was even a fight within itself, and they had bipartisan support. When it comes to our election process, having integrity shouldn't be something that is divided. It should be something that we are all in agreement with, and doing that in a way that is effective and fair is what's important.
All right, Theron, that's a lot to respond to. And I'd like you also to talk about Speaker Ralston's proposal to make state IDs free. Does that make any of these measures any more palatable to you?
Well, it was the right thing for the speaker to do, Russ. I mean, to sort of be a breath of fresh air, to at least be a Republican that does try to offer something to not promote barriers, but to try to actually come with some solutions. And so while I think we should have free IDs in the state, it ultimately doesn't support the measures that have been in place to ultimately create more barriers to voting. I mean, and one of the things that's very interesting, I focused last week on how I believe that it was a surgical attempt to disenfranchise voters with this bill, particularly doing away with Sunday voting. But Russ, I really did some research this week, and what's interesting to me is that the Republican bills are actually hurting their own constituencies. Republicans voted at a higher rate of absentee ballots than Democrats, and particularly get outside of Atlanta on this show, but in rural counties, more Republican voters voted early than Democrats. And the last group that I think that they got to understand that they're hurting is our servicemen and servicewomen in the military. These people rely on early voting, but they also rely on absentee voting. And so I just think that not only are they disenfranchising Black voters and doing away with early voting and Sunday voting, but they're also hurting their own Republican constituencies by continuing to push these measures. Now, the last thing I'll say is that I think that crossover day is Monday, Russ, and that is go time for us at the legislature. You're going to see more people trying to walk this back because I do believe that this is a Republican attempt to throw some red meat to their Trump base, but I think the damage is already done, and corporations are going to start coming out. The Georgia Chamber, Metro Chamber, is going to have a lot of pressure on them to come out and speak up and speak out against these bills very soon. All
right, Theron, thank you. Phil, you know, a Republican Party lawyer seemed to say the quiet part out loud this week in arguments before the U.S. Supreme Court. When Justice Barrett asked why the GOP is fighting efforts to strike down voting restrictions in Arizona, lawyer Michael Carvin said, because it puts us at a competitive disadvantage relative to Democrats. Politics is a zero-sum game. So I'd like you to respond to that, Phil, and also to what Theron was saying about how Republicans are hurting themselves with some of this.
Well, I actually know Michael Carvin, Russ. It's interesting, and he worked with me when I was head of the Southeastern Legal Foundation. What he means is he doesn't want Arizona to have a whole bunch of Fulton counties and DeKalb counties. It goes back to election integrity. I have to laugh at Theron. He's got his liberal talking points down. Nobody's being suppressed here. There's more people voting than ever, and Theron knows very well that the system was overwhelmed. Most people know the system was overwhelmed with all of the absentee ballots and the weak signature verifications. Here's the point. The point is that take Fulton County again as an example. It was not a smooth election on November 3rd. They were still counting and updating their vote counts 12 days after the election. These are that's just one example of what the Republicans and Democrats ought to join in to stop some of this stuff. And, you know, I would have to say that also on the machine count on election night, November 3rd, didn't go with the hand count that was done. We can't have that. And so I think it's great that we have no excuse absentee ballots. I think that the Republicans are getting a lot of support. I think corporate Georgia is divided. I think that most people want election integrity.
Kathy, what's your take on all this?
My goodness, where to start? Let's talk about Arizona and Georgia just for a minute. Those are the two states where the most amount of tinkering with voting process is going on, and not incoincidentally, that's not a word, Warnock and Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona were both elected in special elections and are both up for re-election, which means it's control of the Senate that we're talking about. So put that in your head as you're thinking about why is this happening. Secondly, tomorrow at crossover day, Senate Bill 241 will be up for a vote, and that is the Senate omnibus voting bill, and that is the one that would end no excuse voting. So if you voted and you don't have a disability or over 65 and you appreciated the convenience of being able to vote from your home on your own time, you should call your senator and tell them not to vote for this bill, because I think it's pretty rocky. There's plenty of other vehicles to do this. That one should stop. The other thing that's happening is there's about 80 bills. A bunch of the kind of single issue bills are about taking power away from the Secretary of State to control the election and rearranging how county election boards get configured and who can remove things and how you start processes. Those are not improvements. Not even sure it's constitutional to take power away from the Secretary of State, but he's the most popular Republican because at times he has really kind of walked the line between doing what voters need as opposed to doing what politicians need. So I think people should pay attention to those singular issues that are going on out there. There just simply wasn't voter fraud. We had a lot of people voting, but the voting happened, the counts were real, Biden won, and I think we can go from there.
All right. Thanks to all of you. This is an issue, obviously, that affects all of us, and so does Georgia's vaccine effort. We're going to talk about that when we come back.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Let's turn now to Georgia's vaccine effort. Governor Kemp has said many times in recent weeks that demand for vaccine outpaces supply, but as of Tuesday of this week, we had almost 1 million doses in freezers and ranked last in the country in the pace of distribution, according to the CDC. Now, the governor disputes that, saying the state has been responding to demand for second shots for healthcare workers and the elderly, and 60% of Georgia seniors have had at least one shot. The national average, just 49%. So, Theron, more vaccination sites, as you know, are going to be opening up on the 17th of this month. What's your take on where we are and what more needs to be done?
Well, we need those vaccination spots open quickly, and I think that's something that the governor has been working on. And so while we do rank last as far as people's ability to get their first shot, I would tell you, Russ, my wife is a physician, and had she not been able to get her second shot very early on, she would have had to start the process all over. And so I do understand what the governor says. They're really focusing on getting the second shots to folks. That's very important. But the one statistic that I also read, while, again, we got a lot of work to do as far as getting people their first shots, and I think these vaccine locations will help with that, is that we are doing pretty well when it comes to getting people their first shots that are 65 and older. And I know that was a priority in the 1A group. And so I think we've got a long way to go. But I've talked to a few folks who've actually gone to these vaccine locations across the state. And the process has been pretty seamless. It's just getting understanding of how to actually get signed up. And I know that the state is working on that.
Yeah, some folks waited at the Doraville MARTA station a Friday a week ago for 5 hours to get their shots. I guess they were grateful at the end. Phil, what do you think the state should be doing to get its arms around the logistics in all this?
Well, I'm becoming increasingly optimistic. As you're pointing out, we've got 5 new mass vaccination sites that are opening up. You've got the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine that's going to be hitting soon, and Georgia will be getting that along with the 2 other vaccines. And I think that the Georgia Emergency Management Agency has gotten far better in coordinating with our public health department. I've been critical of them not being brought in at first, but I am tired of these Democrat mayors in Atlanta and Augusta and Savannah and elsewhere that still do these lockdowns. It's time to stop. It's time to look at the whole broader public health picture. Yes, be careful, use some protocols, but let's not, for example, destroy the restaurant industry that's been happening in Atlanta, for example. It's time, and I'm glad that Governor Kemp kept us basically having a balance of reopening and then dealing with COVID. But it's time now for more reopenings, and you can't have President Biden having all of these illegal immigrants coming into Georgia and other states. They're releasing them. They've got COVID. No one's being tested. What is going on with that?
Kathy, Governor Kemp says he's not ready to join the governors of Mississippi and Texas in relaxing COVID restrictions. Do you give him some credit for that?
I do give him credit for that, and I appreciate that because it is just simply too early. We're about to get ahead of this, especially with the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine that we're going to get increased numbers from. And so people just need to hang on a minute. It is hard, but hang on, get those vaccines. I will say I happen to have been a Peace Corps volunteer in the Federated States of Micronesia, and they are down at the bottom of the list with Georgia. To get a vaccine there, you got to fly 12 hours from Hawaii and then get on a boat and go to an island without any electricity. So we're right there competitive with them, and we've got highways. So I think we can do better. I think the fact that we keep falling into the basement of every outcome is unacceptable. People should demand more and put the heat on. The governor's trying, but he's clearly not learning from other states who are doing a better job.
Janelle, I wonder if you think that vaccine hesitancy has anything to do with this. And what do you make of President Biden referring to the elimination of those mask mandates and other restrictions, specifically in Mississippi and Texas, as Neanderthal thinking?
Well, I mean, I don't think, at this point, I really believe everyone's just used to President Biden saying things that doesn't make sense, and we're just kind of gotten used to Democrats also giving him a pass for saying these things and not making any comments or addressing it, and just how he insults people but then claims to be the party of unity. So, I mean, at this point, it's sad, but I think we're just used to it. When it comes to that, there's definitely vaccine hesitation, and that's because it's just something that is new. But at the end of the day, health should be a decision that is made by the individual. We have the vaccine. We have more than flattened the curve. We are in a position now where we can start focusing on the economy, and we need to do so. The COVID crisis, as in general, has created a space for Democrats to focus over there while everything else is happening on the other side that no one wants to talk about. So I think that at the end of the day, I think the other governors, I think they're doing good. I think that's a great job. They're doing a great job. I think about Governor Kristi Noem, who opened up, who never shut down in South Dakota, despite being told that she should, but she listened to her team. We all have COVID teams in our own state, so I think the state should do what their COVID team is seeing because we're right on the ground. And then you have Dr. Fauci saying that he doesn't think it will be normal by summer of 2022. They just keep moving the goalposts. So it's really, really confusing at the end of the day. And I'm interested to see how long we are going to be under these restrictions. But I think that Governor Kemp needs to listen to his team and look at what the team is saying as it relates to this state and make decisions based on that. And so should the other governors.
All right. Last weekend was a violent one on the streets of Atlanta, and freshman Senator John Ossoff raised the issue with the FBI director. He talked about the fact that there were 10 shootings last weekend, and FBI Director Christopher Wray made the point that he thinks that the pandemic may have something to do with this. I know you have some thoughts on this issue. Phil, what do you think our political leadership is doing enough to address crime?
Well, there were 12 shot and 1 dead last weekend, and I'm glad that our liberal senators woke up and actually talked to the FBI director about it. Great, but I tell you, we've got problems that the FBI and Ossoff can't solve in the city of Atlanta and across the state. Russ, you've reported on the gang crisis throughout the state. 73,000 gang members, the estimate is, in Georgia that we've got to get control of. And let's take the city of Atlanta. What can be done about that? You know, I've said that the mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, has got to say we are going to respect due process for every police officer involved in a shooting. That has not happened. She violated that last summer. It really, that's what started everything. And I tell you what, I think that perhaps we can get a new police chief. I know Kathy and I agree on that. And then maybe, I think we're going to have to get a new mayor. So I tell all the police officers, hold out for another year.
All right, Phil, thank you. We're out of time for this segment. Coming up, the competition to make and distribute medical marijuana in Georgia. And we'll look ahead to crossover day.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
70 companies are applying for 6 available licenses to manufacture and supply medical marijuana oil to some 14,000 Georgia patients, people who have seizures, terminal cancer, and Parkinson's disease, among other conditions. And the licenses will be awarded in late spring or early summer. Kathy, I heard you say last week you hope to discuss that issue this week, so the floor is yours. What do you think?
Well, here's the deal. This is an industry that has been developing around the country that got traction here in this state because of the interest of some legislators who, many of whom are now involved in the industry and looking for those licenses. Nothing illegal about that. But there's only going to be 6 of them. And so 6 companies are going to get pretty wealthy and get a head start on any expansion in marijuana sales as a result of this licensing process. And so one of the things we have to consider is, do the 6 companies that get licenses have ownership that is reflective of the population of the state of Georgia, so that we get into a situation as we create this industry where all comers can participate. So, for example, if we got 6 licenses, can we ensure that 3 of the companies are female majority owned or racially minority owned companies, so that we spread this wealth into the communities that support our economy. We'll see the same thing if we have sports betting, because they're going to issue 6 licenses there. I don't know what the magic is about 6. But I think we need to be very considerate about who gets rich when we create these new opportunities.
All right, fair enough. As we mentioned, tomorrow is crossover day in the state legislature. We have just a couple of minutes left in this segment, and I'd like to sort of go around the horn here. Tell us what you're going to be looking for tomorrow in terms of these bills that have a chance of surviving. Janelle, speaking with you.
Yeah, so I'm definitely looking at all the election bills to see which ones make it and which ones don't. I'm also paying attention to HB 112 that protects businesses from COVID lawsuits as well. And so that's one big thing. But I wanted to add something really quickly on what Kathy just said. I did see the applications for the for the marijuana licensing, and there is minority components within that. There must be minority people working along with each of the teams. So that is in there, just to make sure she's clear on that.
All right, fair enough. Theron?
Yeah, and thank you, Janelle, for making that point with Kathy. And to be fully disclosed, I am one of the people who are actually going for a license, but I wanted to make sure that our viewers know that there is a minority participation component in that. And I know that our commission that has been over this, making sure that small businesses and definitely female-owned businesses get a shot at this as well. But beyond the voting election laws and the bills and everything, Russ, I'm paying very close attention to sports betting. I think the Democrats, the minority party, has kind of locked down on this, and so I'll be very interested to see the Republicans really to make a compromise to try to get this bill through.
All right, Phil, what are you going to be looking at tomorrow?
Well, I agree with Theron. I'll look at sports betting. It's a nice source of revenue, and even local option pari-mutuel horse wagering could be snuck in at the last minute on Monday, so keep an eye on that. I think it's totally irresponsible for a bipartisan group. I'm shocked at some of these weak Republicans like Representative Casey Carpenter of Dalton. They want to give in-state tuition to illegal aliens in the university system and in the technical college system. That is so wrong and unfair. It steals slots from our own kids and grandkids, and it's actually, why would we want students from Georgia and South Carolina and Tennessee paying higher? And they're citizens, so I'll be watching that.
All right, Kathy, got 20 seconds for you on crossover day.
Well, mostly I'm watching Senate Bill 241. That's the one that's going to eliminate no excuse voting. I don't think the governor's in support of that. I don't think most Georgians are in support of that, so call your senators. The bill that Phil just referenced is aimed at students that are known as dreamers, who are in this country illegally until they can be reviewed, but they were brought here as children. We want them to stay. We want them to get college degrees and invest in this state rather than going elsewhere.
All right, Kathy, thank you. And coming up, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
My mom always insisted ladies first. Janelle, you go first.
Thank you, Russ. So happy belated birthday to my friend Hyacinth Anderson. She is the mother of my good friend Patricia Anderson. So happy belated birthday to you. And then I want to give a special shout out to the city that I live in, Sandy Springs. I see all the public trail work that is happening, especially around my home, and I really, really love it. So I want to say thank you to the City Council, the Path Foundation, the Sandy Springs Conservancy, and just all the residents that just keep this city beautiful. So just ending on a positive note.
Always love a positive note. Kathy, what do you have for us?
Hey, happy birthday to my friend Eddie Jackson, and she's going through a little bit of a thing right now, so keep your chin up. We're all rooting for you. My other winner is LeBron James and his More Than a Vote movement. They're going to be, talking a lot about Georgia and voting, and we appreciate them being here this weekend. My loser is the Savannah Plant Riverside District in Savannah. They're going to have a 6-day St. Patrick's Day festival. You know, your mom used to say nothing good happens after midnight. Well, nothing good happens with alcohol, crowds, and a virus. So I hope the mayor shuts that down and we come back next year and try again.
All right, Kathy, thank you. Phil, what do you have for us?
Well, Russ, I'm going to have to make as a big loser the Democrat-controlled Fulton County Commission. We're talking a lot about elections on this show. And what did they do? The Elections Board of Fulton County, in a bipartisan vote, fired the incompetent Rick Barron, the elections director. Well, the county commission says, no, you can't fire him. He's staying on. So what good is having an elections board if you're having a political body, the county commission, controlling it? I would be opposed to a Republican-controlled county commission running the election system. Why not even abolish the elections board if this is what they're going to do? This, again, is a terrible signal to send. Let the elections board, they have to work with the elections director. If they want to hire him and fire him, let them do it.
Boy, what a thankless job in Fulton County, too. All right, Theron, you wrap it up for us.
All right, in the spirit of birthdays, I definitely want to wish my mother-in-law, Hilda Hilton, a happy birthday. She's definitely excited about celebrating with us this weekend. Also want to make Vernon Jordan a weekend. We lost him this week. He's an icon, a luminary here from Georgia, and really sort of coined the phrase, taking your advocacy from the streets to the suites. And he was definitely not only a corporate leader, but also a big participant and giver to a lot of different philanthropic efforts here in Georgia. And then lastly, want to make Senator Brian Strickland and Senator Tanya Anderson a winner. They put forth Senate Bill 105 that basically will bring some much needed probation reform. So definitely want to make them winners this week.
All right, sounds good. Thanks to all of you. I have a winners, Freddie and Chelsea Freeman. Congratulations on their twins with a twist. A really good story. Google it, you'll love it. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you next week.